expected to continue. Matt, we're just kind of keeping an eye on this together through the evening, and we've been watching these little circulations that have been going. This is the first one they've actually triggered the warning on, of course, and this one does look a little bit more defined than the earlier ones. We had much smaller circulations. This is a little bit broader, but of course we're out a lot farther from the radar too at this point.
Right, Betsy. Yeah, we certainly are. And in terms of the big picture thinking and all this thunderstorm activity that we've had tonight, I mean, there's lightning everywhere. Everyone's seeing heavy rain tonight. But what we're watching in terms of areas of rotation or areas that could trigger the tornado warnings, it's really on the western flank of this entire line. So as we zoom on out, I'm going to turn lightning off because it's just ridiculous at this point. If we were to have any more tornado warnings, it would be in this section right in here, all right, on the western flank where you're first seeing rainfall out of this huge complex. Back towards the west, as you get back into Cleveland, Lorain, this air mass is so worked over that there's really not a lot of rotation going on. It's where it initially meets up. So that's kind of where we're dealing with the issue right now. And as Betsy mentioned, this is heading into northwestern areas of Huron County and eventually crossing into areas like near Sherman. Right along, you've got Route 20 up in the northwestern half of the county near Bellevue. That runs right into Bellevue along East Main Street. And then you've got Route 4, which runs basically north and south through the county. This tornado warning is for that area. So it's Monroeville out towards the west. That does include Route 20 and Route 4. This will eventually stretch down towards the south. You've got the town of Lyme there as well. Lyme Township Hall is right there along 547 down towards the south. All these areas are going to be impacted as this continues down towards the south. There's no confirmed tornado with this, but there's certainly a strong area of rotation that has continued. It actually developed up near Sandusky before it kind of came down into the areas there, as you see, heading into the northern tier of Huron County. But overall, take this storm seriously. Make sure you get in your safe spot right now. There's lots of lightning, lots of rain outside of this. You've heard all the rumbles of thunder moving in, but this is a dangerous part of the cell right here, in addition to some of that heavy rain that continues down to the south. Betsy?
Yeah, we are definitely seeing some indications that not only do we have that rotation, of course, but there's some pea-sized hail that may be coming down farther to the east in areas around Milan and Norwalk at this point. So the lightning is oftentimes an indicator of just how intense a thunderstorm can be. You get a lot of lightning, you get a pretty intense thunderstorm, and that has definitely been lighting up this evening. Out here, just around Bellevue, so on this is called radar reflectivity. This is basically a picture of just kind of the density of raindrops and whatnot, if you will. But you can kind of see this little hook right here. That's oftentimes a sign that the thunderstorm is spinning and it's wrapping that rain around the backside. And as we showed you earlier, if we show you look at the velocity once again, you'll see that we do have that back and forth on the particulars of which way the wind is blowing. There it is. So we have the wind is blowing away here and toward right here, and you're probably getting some pretty good wind gusts out around the Bellevue area right now. And again, this rotation is very slowly dropping from north to south. It's probably running right along State Route 4 and just west of State Route 4. Starting to see it back off just a little bit. We have access to a newer product with the National Weather Service radar. It's called SAILS. It's wonderful. It's like 1 or 2 minute updates. It's very quick. In the old days, we had to wait 7 to 10 minutes for radar updates. Now we're down to about a minute or two in this case, and it's certainly a good one for us. So that rotation ripped up real quick. It just kind of fired up, and now we're starting to see it broaden out just a little bit, and that may be an indication that we're going to start to see this thunderstorm spreading out as well. Now, as mentioned, there it is. You can see how these thunderstorms have been working from north to south across the area. 77 and east, you guys are good to go. No severe weather for you. You have more rain coming, so we have flooding still a threat. But as far as wind and lightning and tornadoes and hail, that threat remains west, specifically west of 77, all the way from the lakeshore clear down through Holmes County, and it's going to continue to progress south as we go through the night. So as we kind of take it a little bit one step at a time here, we're back out to Bellevue, and again we have our tornado warning right here, extreme southwestern Erie County and extreme northwestern portions of Huron County. The threat is west of Norwalk, and it is west of Milan, so we are more out toward the Bellevue area, and that threat will continue here for about the next 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes. It looked like it was starting to break up a little bit, but certainly the beam is sitting up higher, and of course the tornado that part of it that we're concerned about is much lower. So we have to kind of base it off of what the radar looks like at that certain point. And the National Weather Service went ahead and pulled the trigger on issuing a tornado warning on that one. Meanwhile, farther east, Sandusky, Milan, Huron, Berlin Center, all the way through Vermilion, down to Wakeman, Fitchville, New London, getting very heavy rain right now, and it's really been these rain rates that we have been so concerned with throughout the evening. Also into Lorain County, we've got another batch of heavy rain that's coming down around Sheffield, Sheffield Village, Avon, and Avon Lake, right down through Columbia Station and North Ridgeville, and then even farther south toward Litchfield and Valley City in Medina County. And then look at this next batch of rain that is still to come. This is going to drop south, so you are not done. Erie and Lorain counties with the heavy rain. It is still going to be coming down. We also have severe thunderstorm warnings in effect for areas farther south. That does include Richland, Ashland, and Wayne counties. These intense thunderstorms continue to move south. We have that one that was down around Holmes County, as mentioned, that continues to move that way. But on the tail end of the thunderstorm that is impacting areas around Norwalk and Milan, you could see Ashland and Polk getting in on some very thundery weather with very heavy rain. Also Congress at this hour. And then as we expand the picture a little bit, we add in the flooding threat. So basically everywhere along and west of I-77 in our viewing area is under a flash flood warning right now. We have so much water that has come down around northern Ohio. Frank, our amazing director, just popped in a picture of the CSU cam, and it is looking west at this point, and you'll be able to see the lightning flashes, which at times has been continuous all around northeast Ohio. And it's just been one of those evenings where we have just had a prolific amount of energy in the atmosphere, and it is lighting up the skies. That's great news if you love thunderstorms. It's not great news if you have kids who hate thunderstorms or pets that hate thunderstorms. And I apologize, everybody, because you're going to have a really rough night because these thunderstorms are going to continue. So hopefully you can get everybody settled down at some point. But it's the rain that is going to be the biggest problem for the most people. Bigger picture shows that we continue to have this line of rain, and this started way up here in eastern, eastern sections of Lake Erie, western Canada, and then dropped south. And now we continue to have it. And you can kind of see what I was talking about with that westward progression that's continuing to push the rain to the west. We have a huge bubble of hot air sitting here in Indiana, southern Michigan, and western Ohio. They had temperatures well into the 90s today. That is actually going to help to push back against these thunderstorms. So what we have happening is almost a squeeze play, and you have an incredible amount of moisture that is in the area. It has nowhere to go because they can't really spread into that hot air. There's just not a lot of support for that. Ooh. And then you get the thunderstorms that really work with the heat, the humidity, and it becomes a machine, a rain-producing machine. There's a Shores and Islands cam out at Port Clinton. Look at the lightning. It is almost continuous as we take that nice sweep around there. Obviously a really gnarly night on the lake. I'm hoping that the folks at Bash at the Bay just stayed put and, anchored down, tied up, whatever they could do, because once we had the winds that picked up here in downtown Cleveland, we were out looking at the lake and the waves just were nuts. And that was it was like a switch was flipped. So certainly concerning situation on the west end of the lake for the boaters, which there's a lot of boaters out there right now, but then also back here on shore, of course. I do want to show you the forecast for the night. And as I switch that picture, let me do that one more time, because this is a really big deal when you're talking about thunderstorms. This is where things have not done so well throughout this whole thing. The models have not been able to grasp what's been happening in the atmosphere. It's just too much volatility, so many fine details. Watch what happens when I change the picture here, and you'll see it picks it up beautifully. So this is actually a good thing, because now as we progress through the night, you'll be able to kind of get a better handle as to how this is all going to start to move. And as mentioned, it spreads out to the west, but then we also continue to have some of that rain coming in here around downtown Cleveland. Another Shores and Islands cam for you. There's Marblehead. Look at that lightning and those clouds. You can see those clouds look mean. Look at the waves too, as the lightning is illuminating the water. And you can see those white caps. White caps are significant. You think about being out in a big lake in a 12 or 15 or heck, even a 20 or 25-foot boat. Those waves are going to make life really miserable and downright dangerous. It is a dangerous night on Lake Erie, as look at those waves just coming in. That's a pretty scary sight. All right, so I stopped the clock here at 4 a.m. and I want to show you that we still have thunderstorms with very heavy rain coming down here in Northeast Ohio. So we are not done yet, I'm sorry to say. We'll continue to have rain for the morning commute too, but it does look like things will start to back off as the morning progresses. Now, this is where things start to get tricky in the forecast. And Matt, I don't know if you're ready to pick it up from here.
I'm ready.
But it gets tricky because we still have this heat that's sitting out just to our west, and we're right on the edge of the heat. And because we're right on the edge of the heat, that's why we've had all these problems. And it really kind of muddies the water, if you will, for the forecast for tomorrow. But if you'll pick it up there, Matt, I do want to come back to Bellevue in just a minute. But the way that the radar scans were looking, I'm going to reset. I'll send it to you. You give us an idea of how tomorrow is expected.
Yeah, and Bets, I agree with that. I mean, we're keeping a really close eye on the radar here, and it looks like the velocity product, or that product that shows us our rotation, has kind of broadened out a bit. So the threat is down just a little bit for areas of northwestern Huron County. So tomorrow we'll pick it up from there. Again, leftover rain tomorrow morning will be in the 70s. You're going to have that muggy feel tomorrow morning. That's something we really haven't had yet in this series of events over this course of this high pressure kind of moving in with that heat dome. But it'll be with us tomorrow morning. We're likely going to go dry for a while during the day tomorrow. That's when we turn hot and humid, and then we bring more thunderstorm chances back tomorrow evening, which is unfortunate given all the rainfall we've had here tonight. We're going to bring more rainfall on top of that late tomorrow as it looks right now. So there's our bubble of heat. This bubble of heat's going to try to get in here tomorrow. This is really the only day that we're going to have to worry about it before it retrogrades back towards the west again. But 127 million people in the country right now under widespread heat alerts. You just can't get away from it. And as we've been talking about, that storm track is right where this heat bubble meets the cooler air that we experienced yesterday off towards the north and the east. So that storm track goes right through northeast Ohio, and it's holding. That's why we're seeing this continued rain. It's not a one and done kind of situation, because this pattern is basically stationary tonight. That's why the rain continues. So the thing we have to watch tomorrow, excessive heat watch is out for Erie and Huron counties. This is assuming that we clear things out tomorrow. And you notice that trend is going to be the heat is more towards the west. But all of us are going to get hot tomorrow. National Design Mart hour-by-hour forecast clearing out the rain. This is tomorrow morning. Again, we're talking 10 a.m. Models seem to have a good handle on this. We'll have lingering clouds. They'll probably be kind of murky outside from all the water that we have here tonight. But as we go throughout the midday and early afternoon, all indication is that we clear skies out. When we do so, that heat dome is going to kind of bubble its way in here, at least temporarily. So temperatures will go from the 70s and uncomfortable in the morning to near 90 degrees, especially in our western communities. And that's when it gets hot. All indication is we stay dry through the midday and early afternoon hours, and then we start to toy around with more shower and thunderstorm chances tomorrow evening. And this looks a little bit different than what we're dealing with now. It looks like more of a west to east line that slams south through the area. Severe weather is possible with that. Remember, we're going to be hot and humid. Our atmosphere is going to be loaded, whereas today it's mainly conducive producing heavy rainfall. That heads through, and by Friday at this time, we are going to be finally clearing things out. Temperatures much more comfortable. But the big story has been the flooding here this evening. We've had a ton of rainfall. This is how much rain our model's predicting from here on out. So this is on top of what we've already seen. And this makes sense because we'll have some of the heaviest amounts out towards our western counties, where they're just now seeing that heavy rain move in. Guardians game 1:10 tomorrow, should be dry as of now. And the good news as we get into the weekend, it's going to be a slow improvement, but we're going to still have some humidity this weekend. But eventually, as we get into next week, it looks very, very fall-like. So I'll leave you here with the 7-day forecast before we go back to Betsy, dealing with that Huron County storm. Notice how we're in the 80s to near 90 tomorrow. We have lingering spotty showers around here Friday. Weekend looks okay at this point. Isolated rain shower can't be ruled out with some lingering moisture, but by next week we're in the 70s with much lower humidity and comfortable overnight lows. That's
All right, thanks so much, Matt. Certainly good news there that things are going to settle down for us. We visit Bellevue now, and there is still some rotation. It's not that defined, bright colored rotation that we had before. Colors are a really important thing on this. The reds mean away, the greens means toward, as far as what direction the raindrops are going, and so that's where we can pick up the pattern of circulation. And earlier we had very bright colors. We had a very bright green and we had kind of the duller red. That's a sign that we have higher inbound winds than outbound winds, but there's still that sign of the circulation. So you can see that the colors are not quite as vivid as they were before. That is really great news. That's a sign that things are starting to settle down. My hunch is that the National Weather Service will allow that tornado warning, which is right there. You can kind of see it in the background. Let me flip it over here and turn this on. But they'll probably let this one stick, if only because it is pretty far out from the radar and they just want to make sure that it's good. They've trimmed it down, so now it is just extreme northwestern sections of Huron County. Bellevue is now out of it, but it does look like that this very small area, thankfully, we'll start to see a little bit calmer weather here in the near future. Again, you can see all of the very heavy rain that is ongoing in Erie County and, of course, also in Huron County. And as the lightning has also been really cranking up over the evening, man, we have just had quite a night, and it's not going to end all that soon. Meanwhile, farther to the east in downtown Cleveland, you can see things are clearing out a little bit. We just have light showers ongoing. But here's the thing. We have had huge amounts of rain that came down in a very short amount of time on a lot of concrete and pavement. And that means flooding. And that's always going to mean flooding, no matter how we start to do the infrastructure. So if we could take the live pick full, this is the situation right now on West 117th at Madison. So in between Madison and Clifton, right on the Cleveland-Lakewood line. West 117th is the line there. And you can see how much water is in this underpass. Now, this is an RTA stop very close to here on the south side of these tracks. That is an RTA rapid stop. There's also a bus depot though there. And you can see the folks that decided not to turn around. They tried it and got stuck in those floodwaters. The problem is the floodwaters can come up very quickly, especially in these areas with underpasses. We've had areas around MLK and the cultural gardens. Those typically flood. There's a reason we have the cultural gardens there. It's a flood zone, and we have had reports of flooding there. Also, the underpass at the bottom of Murray Hill in Little Italy had reports that we had a lot of flooding there too. And this water is not receding very quickly. It will recede, but we're going to add more rain to that, so that becomes a big problem. All right, back here on the radar, you can see the light showers continue throughout much of Cuyahoga County at this point. The heaviest rain right now is at around Berea, and that will continue to move out toward Columbia Station. Olmsted Falls and Olmsted Township, you are in there too. And then look at this batch of heavy rain that's still out over the lake that's going to drop south. So we still have plenty of rain to go. We have indications of anywhere from 3 to 3.5 inches of rain that fell in the thunderstorms that came through Cuyahoga County. And so now we're going to try and drain all of that out. Very heavy rain falling also in northern Richland County, northern Ashland County, northwestern sections of Wayne County at this point. We still have active severe thunderstorm warnings in this area, as well as flash flood warnings. There is a huge amount of flash flood warnings in Northeast Ohio. That is not a typical night for us here. As a matter of fact, if I take this off and I'll turn on just the alerts, you'll be able to see all the greens. Now, there's going to be a lot of colors that pop on here. If you give me a chance to explain everything, I'll try and do my best. It's kind of Christmas-like at this point. But here's the situation. We have the flash flood watch. That's the dark green. That goes for most of our counties. It goes all the way out actually through Lorain and Ashland counties, and that goes through tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Anything that is bright green, and there is bright green that's underneath the orange here, that is a flash flood warning. Some of these have been upgraded to considerable flash flood warnings. So if you're sitting in your house and all of a sudden your phone went nuts and you looked and you're like, oh, it's a flash flood warning, that's different.
usually that's done for tornado warnings or for high-end severe thunderstorm warnings. This basically means it's a high-end flash flood warning, and that was triggered because of all of the water rescues that we had going on around Northeast Ohio. By the way, 90 is still shut down at this point at McKinley. And then, of course, we have our severe thunderstorm warnings out here on the west end of things, where our most potent thunderstorms are, with wind gusts and the possibility of some hail. We have our tornado warning that is ongoing in northwestern corner of Huron County. Flood advisories farther to the west, so we've got just standing water and a lot of flooding issues here out in our far western counties, Seneca County, Sandusky County, Marion, all those areas. And then even farther west, that's where all the heat is. And thankfully, at this point, it looks like we're going to get a little bit of a break from the heat because of tonight's thunderstorms. That's a big trade-off. I think the thunderstorms are definitely a worse thing to have at this point because we have just been dealing with so much of the water. But look at how these thunderstorms are building farther to the north. This is what we've been watching ongoing overnight. And this becomes an issue because, again, the rain is not going to end. So Matt showed you the probable rainfall for the night tonight, at least one of the estimates based on one of the models of how much more rain could be coming. We could be looking at several more inches of rain in some locations, especially west of 77 at this point, and then farther south into portions of Holmes County too. So it's been a little bit of a bumpy night for us here in Northeast Ohio, but I honestly, I can't remember a night where we have had this much in the way of flash flood warnings in the area. I brought up earlier Paynesville in 2006. It was at the end of July, right at the beginning of August. We had like 10 inches of rain that came down. That was a little different situation, summertime thunderstorms, but it was all being fed off of the lake, and we had a band that set up. And within 2 hours of the onset of this rain, they started rescuing people out of the second floors of apartment buildings using front end loaders. It was just one of the most surreal memories of my career that I can remember. And again, that was back in 2006. So it's been a long time since we've had a night like this when we have all of this nasty, nasty flooding that is going on. And the problem is we continue to build around Northeast Ohio. Anything that is infrastructure, meaning you get streets and you get parking lots and buildings, and that is not permeable surface. Having a permeable surface like your grass, that's a really big deal in these situations. You know, concrete is not going to soak up the rain. It's going to shed the rain, and all of that rain has to go somewhere. It starts to trickle down into the creeks, streams, ditches, and whatnot, and that's when we start to get the flooding. I've been keeping an eye on river gauges on some of the rivers here along the North Shore, and you know, specifically the Grand River, because Paynesville's on my mind tonight, but even out to the Vermilion River, the Black River, and all of them, you can see a spike in the height, the gauge heights. And that's because that rain is finally getting down into the rivers, and we're starting to see the rivers come up. So we're probably going to see some river flooding here. I don't think it's going to be anything that's out of the banks and whatnot, but it's going to get pretty chunky. This is the Shores and Islands view of Marblehead right now, the live cam out there. And again, when you look at the lightning, that's one thing, but look at the bottom, look at the waves coming in. That is all wind-driven waves. Typically, in this type of a setup, we would be dealing with a southwest wind. That big bubble of hot air wants to push out. So that hot air wants to expand. And since the center of that dome of hot air is to our southwest, we would be expecting a southwest wind. We have an east to northeast wind, and in some cases a north wind. All of that is driven by the thunderstorms. So those big waves that you're seeing there, and that's some pretty chunky stuff that's rolling up on the shore, that is all wind driven from these thunderstorms that we have going on tonight. And of course, that lightning is really kind of a big indicator of what's going on. So I just want to back it up here real quick. Yep, we still have our tornado warning that's ongoing for the extreme northwestern corner of Huron County at this point. And again, this is really starting to see itself breaking up somewhat. We've seen some fluctuations in the intensity of this, but we go back and there's still some indications that we've got some rotation that's ongoing. I think the bigger threat, you know, is basically going to be really squirrely. It's small circulations. We don't have like a real big circulation to really hang our hats on, and we're kind of out on the outskirts of you know, where we can really get a good reading of the lower level of the atmosphere. So it's a pretty tricky situation at this point. But for right now, and it looks like actually they just canceled it. Matt, do you see that?
Yeah, it's gone.
It's still there.
Oh.
There it is, unfortunately, sorry. But I think at this point, you know, that rotation, Matt, in my opinion, seems to have really kind of backed off a little bit. So that is definitely some good news. You seen anything else?
Yeah, they said they're going to let it expire. I just want to kind of level set. A lot of people getting ready for bed right now. Totally get that. You're probably worried, where do we go the rest of the night, depending on where you live. So this is a look at the radar. We've been showing this to you. The heavy rain is going to continue to fall. Basically 3 zones right now, okay? If we had a tornado threat, I'm going to stop the radar. If we had a tornado threat, it is now heading west of our viewing area, okay? So if you're watching us on TV right now, then you're in our viewing area and you are going to be fine in terms of a tornado threat the rest of the night, all right? That is west in that area where the rain and those big storms first hit that dry air. That's where we've been seeing kind of these squirrely thunderstorms. In this zone right here, this is where the heaviest rain is going to be from here on out, all right? The rain continues to come in. It continues to develop on this boundary between the heat trying to push in and the cooler air trying to push in at the same time. So this is where the most convergence of air is, creating that uplift, which creates and wrings out this atmosphere. So the flood threat is going to be real for these areas all the way through the 4, 5, 6 o'clock hour in the morning, all right? We're dealing with flooding in our eastern zone, so if you're in this area here, including Cleveland and Akron, we already have ongoing flooding, but the good news is we're starting to see the rain lessen up. We'll likely continue to see heavy downpours. We're seeing a couple pops here that, you know, indicate some downpours continue. So the rain's not going to end, but the flood threat is going to certainly lessen up, whereas we deal with that on the western side of our viewing area. So 3 zones right now. The tornado threat, I know we have a tornado warning right now for another 2 minutes or so, but the tornado threat is going to be way down as we go throughout the rest of the night. So sleep well with that. However, flooding and all the lightning that we have is going to keep a lot of us up in this zone right here. In terms of severe weather with that, can we get occasional strong wind gusts? Sure, but I really feel like that severe weather threat is starting to ramp down as this whole band continues to push off towards the west. Betsy?
Matt, that was really great insight. Like, just very good information for people, because that's exactly what they're doing. They want to go to bed. When's it going to be over? Well, the rain is not going to end, I'm sorry. And for some, the lightning and thunder is not anywhere near done yet, but by morning we should start to see things backing off a little bit, which is some great news. Hopefully the power outage situation is not going to get worse. We have seen some power outages through the evening. We don't have any school closings as of yet. I know that's going to be the first question a lot of kids are asking when they get up in the morning. You can check wkyc.com/closings for that. We're just going to kind of sit and watch and see how the radar behaves. But for right now, we'll send you back over to programming. Won't break in unless we need to. But stay safe, everybody, and please stay out of the flood water.